Assalamu alaikum and Allah. Thank you so much for inviting me. I'm truly honored to be participating in this and with such wonderful people that we're learning already from. So thank you very much indeed. I think we should go straight into it because there's a lot to cover, and I certainly hope that I can do it within this time. Is it this one or is it that one? That's the one. Now, we're speaking about Mesopotamia. Mesopotamia, the land between two rivers. And what I think is really important to think or to remember is that it is two rivers, and it is these two rivers that have created this civilization. Not just because of water for irrigation, two rivers, transportation, communications, trade, and also a certain number of boats that seem to have continued from earliest times. Over here, we have a bundle boat. These are bundles of reeds that are gathered together and into bundles and used as floats. And you find this sort of boat, and we find other boats as well that I'll be showing you, all over the world. They're essential techniques for making boats. So everywhere around the world where you have material that you can make these boats, you find them. We have over here also Thor Heyerdahl, I don't know where it's at. Thor Heyerdahl, who in the 70s created bundle boat, the Ra, and traveled from Egypt initially and then from Morocco to South America, proving that even the oceans were open to travel and people could travel using drift voyages in this time. What I found interesting is that the bundle boat itself, if a cross-section of it is the actual pattern for the making of the boat. If you look at a reed and cut it, you'll find the pattern for its making. In 1977, Thor Heyerdahl came to Iraq and made the Tigris reed boat, 18 meters by 6 meters, and he brought with him from Lake Titicaca the last people making the most sophisticated of these kind of boats to help and work with the Marsh Arabs to build this boat. And I found it amazing that these people, at the beginning, we were translating from Aymara to Spanish, from Spanish to English, from English to Arabic, and then backwards. And very quickly we found we didn't need any translators because they could communicate with their hands, with their making. That left a very strong impression on me. I had also the privilege of helping to build this boat and to man it and crew it on a journey that took us from Gurna at the confluence of the Tigris and Euphrates down through the Shatt al-Arab to Bahrain, another very important part of this whole network, connected network, and then to the Indus Valley, and from there we traveled to Africa, to Djibouti, Bab el-Mandeb. And what we wanted to prove is that these kind of boats could have traveled, could have done trade, because we know that the Sumerian civilization, it brought copper and used copper, and we don't have copper in Iraq. So where did this copper come from? It could have come from land-based areas, but they found in Oman a copper mine. All that was left of a mountain of copper was the entrance to this mountain, to this mine. And there they also found a port. And in this port, all that remained of the boats were these clumps of tar that had the impression of reeds or mats on one side. On the other side, it had barnacles and sea mollusks, which proved that those boats that they used, and this is before the use of metal to cut wood, to make boats out of wood. So it would have been boats that are made with organic material other than wood necessarily. So we know that they used boats, the bundle boats, possibly to transport copper from Oman, as far away as Oman, to Mesopotamia. Then that was 1977, 78, so I was a young man down there somewhere. have grown. So 2013, I participated in an expedition from southeastern Turkey, from Hasankeyf, an area that is now threatened, seriously threatened. And we have, these are called Calyx, which are basically rafts on floats, and we have evidence of them from earliest times as well. Again, this is a type of boat that was used since the most ancient time. And you can see that, again, Iraq, in southern areas of Iraq, we don't have a lot of lumber, we don't have stone, we don't have these. They used to transport all of these things down the Tigris and the Euphrates on these rafts. I also built, the Calyx I built, and also constructed this, it's called a guffa, which is a type of boat called, in English, it's a coracle, which is basically a spiral basket. And I managed to build it in England online with someone who didn't know how to build it in Iraq. So it's around 40% proper. But on the way down, I noticed that I didn't see any of these boats, but I found this metal version of a guffa. And I'd find later on that most of these traditional boats are being made with metal, not with the traditional material any longer. This is a fisherman's cork. After the expedition, and once we reached, because it was from Hasankeyf all the way to the marshes in stages on the Tigris. After the expedition, I went back because I knew that in Babylon they used to build these guffos. So I returned to Babylon and I found one remaining proper guffa, a fisherman's guffa. Now, guffas were, until the 1950s, a main source of means of transport, ferry crossings, as well as cargo transport in Iraq. And they used to reach like 6 meters in diameter, huge things. Pretty much the same techniques as from ancient time. We also have evidence that in the linear pottery culture in what is now Saxony, the agriculturalists that came out of the Middle East used boats like this in their expansion through the rivers of Europe. So one of the oldest evidences is a pot of that looks like a guffa, like a coracle, that is 7,000 years old. So these are really, really ancient boats. And what also struck me, and this was during the expedition, that when you gather these boats together, they create a pattern. And this pattern, what you see over here, is called the Sebaiyun, which is an amulet that's given to children to protect them. Again, it's one of the most ancient of patterns. You find it in nature. You find it in Islamic patterns. You find it, it's the molecular structure of carbon, of the water molecules. It's in the warka, the temple courtyard, as a mosaic. So I made an exhibition and an artwork using this concept to come with an alternative to the Ark of Noah. Because what has always struck me was that, we do know that there was a flood. We have scientific proof for that. The Mesopotamian valley used to extend all the way to Hormuz, but between 24 and 8000 BC, there were floodings. So there was a flood. We can see the continuation of the rivers in the Gulf. But this is Mesopotamia. It's a certain type of ecology. But the boat that we know of as Noah's boat, which is this sort of thing like you have with films with Russell Crowe, and they've made a $2 million replica in Tennessee and things like that. The structure of this boat is 17th century cog, European cog. Has nothing to do with ecology, nothing to do with the technology of its time and its place. So I was thinking, what would a rational ark be like? How could it be built? So one of the main sort of concepts is that, you wouldn't build an ark, a huge thing that you'd never built before, and put all your eggs in this one basket. I have to say, though, and repeat, that Professor Irving Finkel of the British Museum had found a tablet of 1500 BC, Babylonian, that described the ark as round. And you have to think that, one of the earliest stories of the ark are from 3000 BC with Gilgamesh, and a description of the ark that from one conqueror, one dynasty to the next, you had from the Sumerians to the Akkadians and to the Babylonians and to the Torah and to the Bible, to the Quran. It's like Chinese whispers, and each one describes it according to their own image. So they built this ark in Kerala as one largish round ark, and it sank immediately. Yeah, I mean, all the experiments. There have been experiments. I showed an earlier picture to recreate Sumerian boats with that technology. All of them have sunk. None have succeeded. The only one was what Thor did, which was a full-bodied. It's not a displacement boat. So the idea I had was that it would be maybe more possible to gather everything you have. All the boats you have, all the architectural pieces, everything you have, into one structure and held together. Now, I'm not proving, and I'm not interested in proving what the ark could have been like. That's the first thing from my mind. What I'm trying to do is to hold a conversation about what is rational, what is real, but I also want to have an ark, something that I can use to gather together the knowledge of what is intangible and what is endangered. During the travels that I went through, and what I saw was Iraqi crafts, handicrafts, the popular culture, the boats, everything that we have seen as the essential strata that build civilization. All of it is either disappeared or endangered. We have an area of our culture that we've taken for granted through the centuries. Kingdoms come and go, conquerors come and go, but this always remained the same. And it is this constant, this thing that connects us with our environment, with our ecology, with that alphabet of making, the essential alphabet making, that has been threatened. And we've seen it's in the 20th century, all these boats that stayed for millenniums started to disappear. There are none of them anymore. So I went back to Babylon, and we started building a Gufaf, managing to get it to around 2 meters, and now I have 10 of these. These Gufas are waterproofed using pitch first to soak the coil basket, and then after that dries, they use a special kind of tar. And we find in Iraq, right through this use of tar in our boat building, but also in our roofing, in the same way that, for example, you use copper, because you have copper in the roofing, we use the tar. The ziggurat of Ur, between every strata of bricks, there's a matting with tar. So that's going to play an important role. But I also started looking at things like cordage. Cords is maybe the alif, the A of the alphabet of making. Nobody invented cordage, rope. If you have hair, it's in sinews, it's in vines, it's everywhere. It's such a natural thing to bind and to hold together something. But that's another thing that has disappeared. So we found not the last people, we found people who knew how to make ropes. The last one in Ain Tamar, it's an oasis, one of our few oases. And I had seven kilometers of the stuff made. Now, that's one of the things that I've been, a couple of questions about Thor's use of a reed bundle boat as a trade boat. Perhaps it could not have been that. And one of the things is the use of immense quantities of ropes. When they make these ropes, their hands are bloodied, So how, I'm interested to see what that technology would have been like, whether, archaeologists have found any kind of technology to make these ropes that would have made a difference. And I set up as well a number of workshops in Babylon and also in the marshes to work with the technologies of making small reed boats, as well as structures. And perhaps some of the symbols that we see, this is a symbol for this is a symbol for Inanna, the goddess Inanna, who becomes Venus later on. And this is her symbol, but perhaps this is not so much a symbol, more than a symbol. It could also be a technology, because what you have is a bundle that turns around, creates a circle, and then bifurcates and moves. So I was exploring these sort of issues, as well as looking at structure. These are the famous reed houses of the marshes. They are bundled constructions, because I'm looking at the superstructure. So the ark that I'm thinking is the boats, but it's also the superstructure. How would you have covered it? And that takes in the vernacular architecture, which is also threatened with disappearance. All sorts of different, and making models, etc. And we have this vernacular architecture not just in the rural areas, but even with the Bedouins. You've got incredible structures that use just palm fronds. In the marshes, they use reeds, but the Bedouins use palm, which they construct things. So I'm looking at how to mix these. What are these technologies, and how can we look at them? In the writings of the travelers, they describe of the late 19th century, or 20th century, and earlier, that in the marshes they used to have boats made out of reeds, but hollow boats, canoes, another type of universal boat. But they've disappeared completely. The only images was this that I found from Thesiger, and then later on, looking around, possibly this. So we worked to recreate them, as well as exploring structures using palm to make larger boats. So they're models for larger boats. And this is what's called the Zaima. But this is into the 20th century, with the coming of the British and the Industrial Revolution. Suddenly you had a lot of nails. We even had a factory for nails in Basra. And you have a blossoming of this kind of boat, which is called a Mushaf. It's a canoe that we have examples of from the royal tombs of Ur, from earliest Sumerian times, that seem to have not changed. And we've got quite a few of them. And they're one of the remarkable aspects of the marsh culture. These have disappeared completely, practically completely. So we started looking how to recreate these canoes. What were the techniques? How would they have made these longer canoes, not just these small zaimas, but the longer canoes using cane, including with covering them with mats, like potentially the Sumerian ships that we're looking for. So these are all experiments that we were doing. We have to remember that, this is also a work of art. And there's a beauty of it. And people have noticed how close resembles it is to the Viking ships, with this beautiful curve. This in particular one is a recreated one that we did. But other than sort of this similarity with Viking ships, there's a real connection with the gondolas of Venice. People have said that Basra is the Venice of the East. Well, in actuality, Venice is the Basra of the West, because they modeled on the canal system of Basra, and including we have very very few images of boats from the Abbasid period. This is the miniatures of Al-Wasiti, of Maqamat al-Hariri, and over here you have a boat called Belam Ashari, which used to be part of the waters of Basra. They've disappeared completely as well. So we're looking now to research into it, and we've been commissioned to do the Venice architectural pavilion for Iraq, Venice Biennale 2020, and we have partnership with the last people who make the gondolas. They were very excited to see how to, we'll bring some Marsh Arab builders there. But this kind of boat also is part of the plastic imagination, the creative imagination of the Iraqis. You find it in the works of all the Iraqi artists. This is Jawad, Shakir Hassan, in the abstract as well as the representative. It's an iconic boat, the Mushaf. And you find it till now. Any hotel you go, you'll have images of these boats, but in reality, they have disappeared. One reason is that because the marshes where they have been built, used to be built, has gone through wars, has been damaged, has been dried out, has gone through horrible things. This year we've had rains and a new resuscitation, but it's not just the marshes that have been destroyed and hurt. There's also the waterways, the canals that used to go into the palm groves. People used to go with their boats and take the dates from the boats directly into their palms. It's part of the beautiful. Nobody mentions that. This again is being destroyed with the intrusion of salt water, the rising of water, and poor quality of water, lack of water. Yeah. So we went to Huwair, which was the center for building these mushafs, and we found that the boats now are being made using the cheapest of material and without any prow, this curved prow. And they're now going from cheap materials, prowless, very, very simple mushafs, to fiberglass. Cheaper, because it's only the poorest that can afford it. Mostly what they do are what's called shakhtur, which is a canoe with a cut end so that you put a motor on. And as well as, with metal boats. So in our going through Huwair, we found the families that used to build the great Terrazas and mashahif of the marshes, Bani Asad, and had conversations. When we showed them the books of Gabanyang, of Thesiger, of all these people who had been there, they could recognize people, they could recognize who these were, they could recognize the type of boats, they could even recognize who made which boat. Yeah? Which is one of the things that I consider these boats works of art. One of my favorite of these boats, it's called a Chileka. It's a small one. It's a lovely boat. Yeah. So I decided as an artwork to recreate it, and we did a workshop in their woodshop workshop, and there was an amazing interconnection between generations, from the youngest to the oldest. We found the sons of the people who used to build it. They were building it with us. So this is the Chileka and the tarring. Each one of these boats go for the Mushaf, the tarred, and all this tar comes from the western Iraq, from the area of Anbar, by heat, which we will visit given time. Yeah? And my host, Abu Sajjad, he works in transporting the tar from there to the southern regions. That's his job now. And his family always have transported these boats or dealt with the tar. So we got a bit more ambitions, and we got a bit of money from the Nahrain Foundation in partnership with Basra Museum, to recreate Thesiger's Tarada. This is the Sheikh's Tarada. It is the most proud of all the Taradas, and it disappeared in the early 60s with the revolution, because Sheikhs were off the agenda, with the Republican Revolution. And here we are building these the Taradas, And there are a lot of details, and I think one of my things is that there's so many stories, but I'm looking at the time, and there we go. So we built it, and we took it through the town, which celebrated this coming. It was amazing, because unannounced, we took it through the town and into the water. And we discovered as well a man over there who, we have not a single photograph of these mashhufs using sails, but I had seen in the photographs what is called a mast step. It's a place where you put a pole in, and they said that you use it to make shades for the sheikh, and also as a sail. And when I spoke to we've been making many oral, we've done studies right through. All of it is recorded, documented, photographed, etc. Thousands of photographs and tens, if not hundreds, of hours of oral documentation. So they said that they used to make for the sheikhs a umbrella against the sun, but also using sails. And this is completely new. We have no evidence, photographic evidence of that. But when multiple people said that was the case, and we found one who said, I'll do it, because I used to do it. I used to be the one who would take these sheikhs on travel. This is the first trip. We, of course, had a picnic, to enjoy it. But another sign of the sheikh's canoe is these nejm. They're called the stars, which are iron studs. This is all part of it's bling, as you'd have it. Now all the sheikhs are four-wheel drives. And with South Qahtan, we are trying to convince some of the sheikhs at least to bring them for their villas on the river, and get that continuity. We then took them to Chibayish and had a festival. Abdul Hamdani is now the Minister of Culture. He was a co-investigator at the beginning with us. Now he's Minister of Culture, so we've got an ally in the ministry now. This is taking them into the marshes for the first time but as well as that, we're looking at how to sustain this. How do we sustain this? And one of the things that we're doing is developing these models, which I've had the pleasure to donate. One example. The first one we donated was the first museum in the marshes, using the Reed House technology. It's a proper museum by Ra'ad al-Asadi. He's been working tirelessly for years to build it, and we donated that. But Ra'ad al-Asadi, and this is also a tourism business, but they use only these shakhtours, motors. So when you go to the marshes now, you're basically taken with an engine right through on that sort of thing. So we want to see how to give possibly a different experience. An experience that I had the pleasure to share with my wife and daughter. And happily, the Huwair have now set up an association for their cultural heritage. And that will be one way of doing it. And we're already having visits. There's a Japanese man who's coming and who's ordering a mashhuf to recreate the travels of Thesiger and Gavin Young. It's also a place where archaeologists have been visiting to look at the site and the remains that you find through the building of these boats and the remains of the tar. Because these boats, they get retarred and you get patterns on it. So we're having archaeologists who are working with marine sites in Iraq where there's nothing left of these boats coming there as well. So we have got a place where you can do research. You can work and you can make these things, and a beautiful place to visit. And hopefully you may visit. But that wasn't, now that's sort of finished and we're now at the next stage. But now what we're doing is what we've just done, is to recreate a far more elusive boat. As much as the Mushaf was very famous and very known, this was the least known, yet the most important for our archaeology and for our traditional culture. And that's called the asbiya. This was a one-way boat, built to take lime and tar and pitch from its source in Ambar, and this is heat, to the south. So this was the main way of transporting all of this down the thing. And they're very close to Syria and has connection with, on the Euphrates, with Syrian traditions of Sumerian heritage. And the particular thing about this type of boat is that it's got a straight sides. And we have got models that I believe are depictions of this boat. But until now, nobody has identified what these boats are. This is in the Basra Museum with Qahtan, who showed me these pieces that they brought to their collection. And you can see also over here at the bottom, there's a lip. That lip is over there as well. And this is also very much a mark of this type of boat. We have it all the way to Bahrain. This is an object from Bahrain. But there's no remains, and this boat disappeared in the 50s, completely taken over by mechanical transport. Here you have got an image of it, of transporting the things. So we went to Heat, and luckily found a man who just 2-3 months before we came to build this boat was telling his son that he wants to build an asbiya because he's going to die, and he wants to build or see it again because he built it with his father. He built the last asbiyas for Haji Hamdi Na'man, a very, very religious man, but also a scholar. And we have got this right through Iraq. Local scholars who know the culture around them, who document it. So gladly we found him, and we found also a builder, the single builder left who builds boats. And together we found women who make leaf rope from the palm leaf. Because there's no nails in this boat. Everything is tied and put together and using bundles. So it's a mixed technique that is very close to what would be called wattle and daub in architecture. Again, this is the tarring of it. And over here, because it's huge, this is 7 meters by 2.5 meters. And we did two. This is the large one, and we did the Dalil, which is the guiding boat. These boats were very heavy, and they used to be filled until they got right into the water. And they needed to have a guide in front of them, built with the same sort of, but smaller, to guide them through the shallows of the Euphrates. So we started building the big asbiya kaya, and then we decided to make the smaller one first, luckily, because it has been enormously expensive. There's so much material that nobody has been working with before, including the type of tar we used. It's a very specific tar that dries very, very hard, and comes from springs, from sulfur springs, in the form of teardrops. So that had to be gathered, and it takes 3 days to cook this tar. So it's incredibly, and what you see over here is called a faza, which means actually a scare. But what that means is that when we had to flip the base several times, it's 3 minutes. Flip the base several times and do that sort of work. So you call out, and people come naturally to help you with this kind of work. So here we've got our first use. It actually floated. It's still floating, this technique with the asbiya. And it became a local celebration. And this over here is another workshop that we did, a training with these boats and young people. We are partnering with an organization called Hamad Dijla, the Protectors of the Tigris, and a network of young people training on these boats for an expedition that we hope to do from Helden, now from up above, this is before the heat, from Heat to Basra on the Euphrates, and hoping to take this boat, the Tarade and the Gufwa, to London for an expedition from Oxford to the Thames, as Mesopotamia upon Thames. Maybe we come your way and sort of join together with the Swedes. No? So I thank you very much, and I thank very much the people who helped make this possible.